So this is theme 6, Bhakti and Sufi tradition. So changes in religious belief and devotional text, that is 8th to 18th century. We saw in chapter 4 that by the mid first millennium BCE, the landscape of the subcontinent was dotted with a variety of religious structures, that is stupas, monasteries, temple. If these typify certain religious beliefs and practice, others have been reconstructed from textual traditions, including the Puranas, many of whom received their present shape around the same time. And yet others remain only faintly visible in textual and visual record. New textual sources available from this period include composition attributed to Port Saint, most of whom express themselves orally in regional language used by ordinary people. These compositions, which are often set to music, were compiled by disciples or devotees, generally after the death of the Port Saint. What is more, these traditions were fluid. Generation of devotees tended to elaborate on the original message, and occasionally they were modified, that is, their original message was modified or even amended, some of the ideas that appeared problematic or irrelevant in different political, social or cultural context. तो क्या होता है, जैसे जैसे टाइम प्रोग्रेस करता है तो किस में चेंज आता है, पॉलिटिकल चेंज आता है, सोशल चेंज आता है, एज वेल एज द कल्चर चेंज आता है, तो कुछ आइडियाज़ को हमें मोल्ड और चेंज करना ही पड़ेगा. So using these sources thus poses a challenge to historians. Historians they also draw on hagiographies or the biographies of saints written by their followers or members of their religious sect. So these may not be the literally account, but they allow a glimpse into the ways in which devotees perceive the lives of these path-breaking women and men. As we'll see, these sources provide us with insight into a scenario characterized by dynamism and diversity. Let us look at some element of these more clearly. So you can see this image. This is a 12th century bronze sculptures of Manikavachakar, and he was a devotee of Shiva who composed beautiful devotional song in Tamil. ठीक है, Manik Kavachakar. ठीक है. Now this is a mosaic of religious belief and practice. Perhaps the most striking feature of this phase is the increasing visibility of a wide range of god and goddess in sculptures as well as in text. At one level, this indicates the continued and even extended worship of the major deities, Vishnu, Shiva, and the goddess, each of whom was visualized in a variety of forms. The integration of cult. Historians who have tried to understand these developments suggest that there were at least two processes at work. One was the process of disseminating Brahminical ideas. This is exemplified by the composition, compilation, and preservation of Puranic texts in simple Sanskritic work. फिर से एक बार देखना, integration of cult. Historians who have tried to understand these developments suggest that there was at least two processes at work. One was the one was the process of disseminating Brahminical ideas. तो एक तो Brahminical ideas हो गया. This is implied by the composition, compilation and the preservation of Puranic text in simple Sanskrit verse, explicitly meant to be accessible to women and, and Shudras who were generally excluded from the Vedic learning. At the same time, there was a second process at work, that is the Brahman accepting and reworking the belief and practice of these and other social categories. तो एक category था accepting and reworking. In fact, many beliefs and practices were shaped through the continuous dialogue between what sociologists have described as great it is Sanskritic Puranic tradition and little tradition throughout the land. One of the most striking examples of this process is evident at Puri, Odisha, where the principal deity was identified by the 12th century as Jagannath, literally the world, Lord of the world, or the form of Vishnu. Okay. Next, if you if you compare, you will notice. If you compare, you will notice. Notice that the deity is represented in a very different way. In this instance, there was a local deity, okay, whose image was and continues to be made of wood by local tribal specialists, was recognized as a form of Vishnu. At the same time, Vishnu was visualized in a way that was very different from that in other part of the country. Such instances of integration are evident amongst goddess cult as well. Worship of the goddess often simply in the form of a goddess, in the form of a stone smeared with an ochre, was evidently widespread. These local deities are often incorporated within the Puranic framework by providing them with an identity as a wife of the principal deity. Sometimes they were equated with Lakshmi, the wife of Vishnu, in other instances with Parvati, the wife of Shiva. Now, often associated with the goddess were her forms of worship that were classified as tantric. So, tantric practice were widespread in several parts of the subcontinent. They were open to women and men, and practitioners often ignored differences of caste and class within the ritual context. Many of these ideas influenced Saivism as well as Buddhism, especially in the eastern, northern, and southern part of the subcontinent. All of these somewhat divergent, even disparate belief and practice would come to be classified as Hindu over the course of the next millennium. ठीक है. The divergence is perhaps most stark if we compare Vedic and Puranic tradition. अगर हम वैदिक और पुरानिक ट्रेडिशन को कंपेयर करेंगे तो डाइवर्जेंस अच्छे से दिखेगा. प्रिंसिपल डिटी ऑफ द वैदिक ओके हाँ the principal deities of the Vedic pantheon, that is Agni, Indra, Soma, they become marginal figures, really visible in the textual and visual representation. And while we can catch a glimpse of Vishnu, Shiva, and goddess in Vedic ek mantra, they have little in common with the elaborate Puranic mythologies. However, in spite of these obvious discrepancies, the Vedas continue to be revered as authoritative. So, what was authoritative? Vedic pantheon or the Puranic? So, Vedas. Not surprisingly, there was sometimes conflict as well. Those who valued the Vedic tradition often condemned practices that were beyond the closely regulated contact with the divine through the performance of sacrifice or previously chanted sacrifice and mantras. On the other hand, those engrossed in tantric practice frequently ignored the authority of the Vedas. So also devotees often tended to project their chosen deity, either Vishnu or Shiva, as supreme. Relation with other traditions such as Buddhism, Jainism were also often fraught with tension, if not open conflict. The tradition of devotion or bhakti need to be located within this context. Devotional worship had a long history of almost 1,000. So जो devotional worship था 1,000 years से, ठीक है, before the period we are considering. During this time, the expression of devotion ranged from routine worship of deity is within the temple to ecstatic adoration where devotees obtain a trance-like state. ठीक है, ecstatic adoration जहाँ पे trance-like state था. The singing, chanting or devotional composition was often a part of such mode of worship. This was particularly true of the Vaishnava and the Shaiva sect. Now the problem of prayer, early traditions of bhakti. In the course of the evolution of these forms, in the course of evolution of these forms, and let me check this one. Okay, this is better. So in the course of the evolution of these form of worship in many the poem, prayer, early traditions of bhakti. In the course of evolution of these form of worship in many instances the poet saint they emerged as leader. Who were the leader? Poet saint. तो ऐसे सेंट जो पोएट्री करते थे, लीडर्स अराउंड whom there developed a community of devotees. ठीक है. Further, while Brahmins remain important intermediaries between God and devotees in several form of bhakti. तो मेन इंटरमीडियरी कौन था? ब्राह्मण. किसके बीच में? गॉड और डिवोटी इन सेवरल फॉर्म ऑफ भक्ति. दीज ट्रेडिशंस आल्सो अकोमोडेटेड एंड एक्नॉलेज वुमेन and lower caste categories considered ineligible for liberation within the orthodox brahminical framework. What also characterized tradition was bhakti was a remarkable diversity. At a different level, historians of religion often classified bhakti tradition into two broad categories, that is sagun with attribute and nirgun without attribute. ठीक है. So this for the former included tradition that focus on the worship of specific deities as Shiva, Vishnu and Avatar, incarnation and form of goddess or देवी. और तो ये क्या था? सगुन with attribute भक्ति था. ठीक है. Often conceptualized is in an anthropomorphic way form. तो ये चीज़ देख लो. एक तो आपका ये तो देखा ही आपने, एक है निर्गुण, एक है सगुण. अब क्या था? जो निर्गुण भक्ति, जो सगुण भक्ति थी, उसमें क्या है? स्पेसिफिक डिटीज़ की पूजा करते थे हम लोग. डिटी जैसे शिवा, विष्णु, अवतार एंड देवी. ऑल अदर कॉन्सेप्टलाइज इन एंथ्रोपोमॉर्फिक फॉर्म. और निर्गुण जो भक्ति थी ऑन द अदर हैंड वाज वर्शिप ऑफ एन एब्स्ट्रैक्ट फॉर्म ऑफ गॉड. ठीक है. Alvars and Nanos of Tamil Nadu. Some of the earliest Bhakti movement, that is 6th century. Bhakti movement कब? 6th century इसमें सोचो. were led by the Alvar. Alvar literally those who immerse in devotion to Vishnu. And Nayanas. Nayanas मतलब Shiva. So they travel from place to place. They singing hymns in Tamil in praise of their god. During during the travels of during the their travel during their एक मिनट. So during their travel, the Alvars and Nana they identify certain shrines as abodes of their chosen deity. जब वो ट्रैवल कर रहे थे तो कुछ श्राइन्स को उन्होंने कहा कि हमारे डिटी रहते हैं. वेरी ऑफन लास्ट वहाँ पे बड़े बड़े टेम्पल्स बन गया था, बिल्ट एट दैट सेक्रेट प्लेसेस. दीज डेवलप्ड एज अ सेंटर ऑफ पिलग्रिमेज. ठीक है. यहाँ पे सिंगिंग कंपोजिशन ऑफ दीज पोर्शन बिकम पार्ट ऑफ द टेम्पल रिचुअल इन द श्राइन एज इट वर्शिप ऑफ द सेंट इमेजेस. एटीट्यूड टुवर्ड्स द कास्ट. सम हिस्टोरियंस सजेस्ट दैट द अल्वर्स एंड नायनास इनिशिएटेड अ मूवमेंट ऑफ प्रोटेस्ट अगेंस्ट द कास्ट सिस्टम. कुछ ऐसा कहते हैं कि जो अल्वर्स और नैनास थे they initiated a movement of protest against the caste system and the dominance of the movement of protest against the caste system dominance of Brahmins or least attempted to reform the system. To some extent this is corroborated. To some extent this is corroborated by the fact that the Bhaktas hail from the diverse, जो कि क्या थे, अब क्या है, जो ये जो भक्तास थे वो डिफरेंट डिफरेंट सोशल बैकग्राउंड से आए थे, कुछ ब्राह्मण्स टू आर्टिशियन कल्टिवेटर्स एंड इवन फ्रॉम कास्ट कंसिडर्ड एज अनटचेबल, तो यहाँ से भी थे. द इम्पॉर्टेंट ट्रेडिशन ऑफ द अलवर एंड नैनवा वाज समटाइम्स इंडिकेटेड बाय द क्लेम दैट द कंपोजिशन वर एज इम्पॉर्टेंट एज द वेदास. तो कुछ ये था कि जो इनके अलवर्स और नैनास के जो कंपोजिशन थे वो वेदास जितने इंपॉर्टेंट है. फॉर इंस्टेंस वन ऑफ द मेजर एंथोलॉजीज ऑफ कंपोजिशन बाय द अलवर, अलवर ने एक लिखा था जैसे था नालैरा दिव्य प्रबंधम was frequently described as the Tamil Ved, thus claiming that the text was significant as the four Veds in Sanskrit that was cherished by the Brahmin. So perhaps one of the most striking features of this tradition was the presence of women. शूद्रा को भी देखा था, untouchables भी थे, artisan, cultivator, ब्राह्मण सब लोग थे. Women थी. For instance, the composition of Andal. Andal एक woman थी. She was Alvar, were widely sung, continued to be sung to date. Andal saw herself to be the beloved of Krishna. Her verses express her love for the deity. अनदर वुमेन, जैसा नाम था, एक तो तुमने अंडल पढ़ लिया, दूसरा तुम्हारा कौन था, कराइकल अमैयर. शी वॉज अ डिवोटी ऑफ शिवा, adopted the path of extreme asceticism in order to attain her goal. Her compositions were preserved within the Nainar tradition. तो दोनों नाम याद एक बार फिर से ध्यान से देख लो. एक थे आपके अंडल, एक था कराइकल अमैयर. ठीक है, अंडल, कराइकल अमैयर, इंपॉर्टेंट. So her goal, her composition were preserved within the Nayana tradition. These women renounced their social obligations but did not, सोसाइटी में जो उनकी ऑब्लिगेशन था उन्होंने उसको छोड़ दिया, बट डिड नॉट जॉइन एन ऑल्टरनेटिव ऑर्डर टू बिकम नन. देयर वेरी एग्जिस्टेंस एंड देयर कंपोजिशन पोज अ चैलेंज टू पैट्रियार्कल नॉर्म. तो they were challenging the patriarchal norm. This is except from a poem by Karakkal Amayar. She was a Nainar, in which she describes herself, the female pay, with bulging veins, protruding eyes, white teeth, sunken stomach, red hair, jutting teeth, lengthy shins extending till the ankle, shout and wail while wandering in the forest. This is the forest of Alankatu, which is the home of Father Shivo, who dances with his matted hair through on all 8 directions and with cool limbs. यहाँ पे हमने पढ़ा था. This is a verse composed by Appar and Anna Saint. O Rake, who quote the law book, of whom are your Gotrankula, just bow to the Marperu Lord Shiva, who resides in Marperu in Thanjavur, Tamil Nadu, as your sole refuge. This is an excerpt from the composition of Elva named Tondaripatti, who was a Brahma, and you, Vishnu, manifestly like those servants who express their love for your feet, though they may be born outcast more than and the Chaturvedins, who are the strangers and without allegiance to your service. Okay. Compilation of devotional literature. By the 10th century, the composition of the 12 alvars were compiled. तो 12 alvars के जो compositions थे, कितने alvars के? 12. Compiled in mythology known as Nalaira Divya Prabandham, 4000 sacred composition. The poem of Appar, Samandar, Sundarar formed the Devram, a collection of that was compiled and classified in the 10th century, the basis of music of the song. Okay, सारे. So this is a 12th century का bronze image of a Karakkal Amayar. Okay. Relationship with the state. As we saw in chapter that there were several important chiefdoms. ठीक है, कहाँ पे? Tamil region. In the early first millennium CE, from the second half of the first millennium, there is evidence for state. फिर आते हैं, पहले chiefdom था, फिर state, including those of the Pallava and Pandya. That is 6th to 9th century. Pallava and Pandya. While Buddhism and Jainism had been prevalent in this region for several centuries, drawing support from merchant and artisan communities, those religion traditions received occasional royal patronage भी मिल जाता था. Interestingly, one of the major theme in Tamil Bhakti hymn is the poet is opposition to Buddhism and Jainism is particularly marked in the composition of Nayanars. Historians have attempted to explain the hostility by suggesting that it was due to competition between the members of the other religious tradition. ठीक है, जितने से religious traditions थे, चूँकि सबको चाहिए था रॉयल पैट्रोनेज, तो उसके लिए वो कम्पीट करते थे. वॉट इज एविडेंट इज दैट द पावरफुल चोला रूलर जो 9 से लेकर 13 सेंचुरी में थे, दे सपोर्टेड ब्राह्मणिकल एंड भक्ति ट्रेडिशन, मेकिंग लैंड ग्रांट and constructing temple for Vishnu and Shiva. In fact, one of the most magnificent Shiva temples, including those at Chidambaram, ये सब शिवा टेम्पल हैं, थंजावुर, गंगाई कोंडा चोलापुरम, they were constructed under the patronage of Cholapuram. तो चिदम्बरम, थंजावुर, गंगाई कोंडा चोलापुरम. So this was also the period when some of the most spectacular representations of Shiva in the bronze sculptures were produced. Clearly, the vision of the Nayanars inspired artists. Both Nayanars and Alvars were revered by the Vellala peasant. ठीक है. Not surprisingly, rulers tried to win their support as well. The Chola kings, for instance, often attempted to claim divine support and proclaim their own power and status by building splendid temples that were adorned with stone, metal sculptures to recreate the visions of these popular saints who sing in the language of the people. These kings also introduced the singing of तमिल में शैवा हिम इन द टेम्पल्स अंडर द रॉयल पेट्रोनेज. ठीक है. टेकिंग द इनिशिएटिव टू कलेक्ट एंड ऑर्गेनाइज देम इनटू अ टेक्स्ट. तो जितने भी शैवा के हिम थे उनको तेवरम बना दिया गया था एक टेक्स्ट फॉर्म में. फॉर द इंस्क्रिप्शनल एविडेंस फ्रॉम अराउंड 945 सजेस्ट दैट द चोला रूलर, एक चोला के रूलर थे. तो ये पता ना कौन से 10 से 13 या 14 सेंचुरी, सॉरी 9 से 13 सेंचुरी में. तो चोला रूलर थे जिनका नाम था परंटक वन, हैड कंसिक्रेटेड मेटल इमेजेस ऑफ अपार, संबंदर एंड सुंदरार इन अ शिवा टेम्पल. तो उन्होंने शिव के टेम्पल में किसकी किसकी पोर्ट्रेट इमेजेस लगाई थी, अपार, संबंदर एंड सुंदर. सो दे वर कैरिड इन प्रोसेशन and during the festivals of these saints. So anything else? An image of Shiva as Nataraj. Okay. Now the Veer Shaiva tradition in the 12th century witnessed the emergence of a new movement. कौन सी सेंचुरी में आया था? 12th सेंचुरी में. कहाँ पर? कर्नाटका में. लेड बाय ब्राह्मण जिनका नाम था बासवना. 1106 से 68 to 12th century. He was a minister in the court of Kalachuri ruler. His followers were known as Veer Shaivas, that is heroes of Shaivas or Lingayat, weavers of the Lingayat. Lingayat continue to be an important community in the region today. They worship Shiva in his manifestation as a link, and men usually wear a small link in a silver case on a loop strung over the left shoulder. Those who are revered include the Jangam or wandering. Those who are revered include the Jangam. Who are Jangam? Jangams are the wandering monk. Lingayat believe that on death the devotee will be united with Shiva and will not return to this world. Lingayat believe कि जब on death the devotee will be united with Shiva and will not return to this world. Therefore, they do not practice funerary rites such as cremation. Lingayats believe that on death the devotee will be united with Shiva and will not return to this world. इसलिए therefore they do not practice funerary rites such as cremation prescribed in धर्मशास्त्र. धर्मशास्त्र में लिखा cremation होगा लेकिन उन्होंने कहा ऐसा कुछ नहीं होगा. Entered assembly bury their dead. ठीक है. The Lingayats challenge the idea of the caste. Challenge कैसे किया था? Caste को and the pollution attributed to certain groups of Brahman. They also question the theory of rebirth. These won them followers amongst those who were marginalized within the Brahminical social order. The Lingayats also encourage certain practices disapproved in the Dharmashastra, such as post-puberty marriage and the remarriage of widows. Our understanding of the Veer Shaiva tradition is derived from the Vachanans, literally saying composed in Kannada by women and men who joined the मूवमेंट. तो इतनी बेसिक चीज़ है, एक बार फिर से देख लेते हैं. 12th सेंचुरी में वीर शैवा ट्रेडिशन आया था कर्नाटका में. ये एक ब्राह्मण थे जिनका नाम था बासवन्ना. ही वॉज अ मिनिस्टर इन द कोर्ट ऑफ अ कालाचूरी रूलर. इनके फॉलोवर्स को वीर साहबाज या लिंगायत बोलते हैं. लिंगायत जो है शिवाजी को वेलसअप करते हैं इन द मैनिफेस्टेशन ऑफ लिंगा. और जो कुछ दोज हु आर रिवर्ड इंक्लूड द जंगम ऑफ द वंडरिंग मॉक. लिंगायत बिलीव कि डेथ के बाद जो है वो सीधा शिवा से सोल मिलेगी यूनाइटेड विद शिवा, तो वापस नहीं आएगी. तो फिर क्रिमेशन नहीं करते थे. धर्मशास्त्र में लिखा था क्रिमेशन करना. वो अपने डेथ को बरी करते थे. लिंगायत चैलेंज द आइडिया ऑफ द कास्ट एंड पोल्यूशन एंड दे आर्ग्यूड सर्टेन ग्रुप बाय ब्राह्मण. उन्होंने रीबर्थ को भी क्वेश्चन किया था और इसमें मार्जिनलाइज कम्युनिटी भी ज्वाइन कर लिया था. सो ऐसी जो भी प्रैक्टिस, बेसिकली कई प्रैक्टिस ऐसी थी जो हमें साथ डिसअप्रूव करता था, वो ये करते थे. जैसे कि पोस्ट प्यूबर्टी मैरिज और रीमैरिज ऑफ विडोज. तो वीर शैवा के बारे में हमें इतना पता चला कि वचन लिखे गए हैं कन्नड़ में. वुमेन ने भी लिखे हैं, मैन ने भी लिखे हैं. यहाँ पे देख लो. Here is a vachan composed by Vasavana. When they see a serpent carved in stone, they pour milk on it. If the real serpent comes, they say kill, kill. To the servant of the god, who could eat if served, they say go away, go away. But to the image of the god which cannot eat, they offer dishes of food. Okay. New religious development. This period also witnessed two major developments. On one hand, many ideas of the Tamil Bhaktas, especially the Vaishnavas, were incorporated within the Sanskritic tradition, culminating in the composition of one of the best-known Puranas, the Bhagavad Puran. Second, we find the development of traditions of Bhakti in Maharashtra in the 13th century. So, religious ferment in North India. Okay. During the same period in North India, deities such as Vishnu and Shiva, they were worshipped in temple. तो विष्णु एंड शिवा की पूजा करते थे टेम्पल्स में, often built with the support of ruler. However, historians have not found evidence of anything resembling the composition of Alwar and Nayanar till the 14th. उन्होंने कहा कि यहाँ पर अलवर नायनार जैसा कुछ composition नहीं है. So how do we account for this difference? हमें historians point out that in North India this was the period when बहुत सारे राजपूत states आ गए थे. In most of these states, Brahmins occupied position of importance, performing a range of secular and ritual functions. There seems to have been little or no attempt to challenge their position directly. तो कोई मतलब ही नहीं बनता challenge करने का, जो कि राजा लोगों ने खुद वो कर रहे हैं, बढ़ावा दे रहे हैं. At the same time, other religious leaders who did not function within the orthodox Brahminical framework. So कुछ और थे जो they were gaining ground. These include जैसे नाथ, जोगी, सिद्धा. Many of them came from artisanal group. Artisan वाले थे including weaver who were becoming increasingly important with the development of organized craft production. अब rulers जो है इनका patronage बढ़ रहा था तो वो develop हो रहे थे. ठीक है, डेवलपमेंट किसकी वजह से? क्राफ्ट प्रोडक्शन. डिमांड फॉर सच प्रोडक्शन ग्रू विद इन द इमर्जेंस ऑफ न्यू अर्बन सेंटर्स एंड लॉन्ग डिस्टेंस ट्रेड विद सेंट्रल एशिया एंड वेस्ट एशिया. तो ये रिच होने लगे. मैनी ऑफ दीज न्यू रिलीजियस लीडर्स क्वेश्चन द अथॉरिटी ऑफ द वेदास को क्वेश्चन करने लग गए एंड दे एक्सप्रेस इन लैंग्वेज स्पोकन बाय ऑर्डिनरी पीपल विच डेवलप ओवर सेंचुरीज into the ones used today. However, in spite of their popularity, these religious leaders were not in a position to win the support of the blood. उनको रूलिंग एलाइट जो कि राजपूत थे तो वो उनको फेवर नहीं कर रहे थे. ठीक है, गॉट इट. रूलिंग एलाइट. ओके, अ न्यू एलिमेंट इन दिस सिचुएशन वॉज द कमिंग ऑफ द. उसके बाद आते हैं हम आपके टर्क विच कमिटेड इन द एस्टैब्लिशमेंट ऑफ द दिल्ली सल्तनत आया 13th सेंचुरी में. दिस अंडरमाइन द पावर ऑफ मैनी ऑफ द राजपूत स्टेट. अब राजपूत स्टेट की पावर जो है वो गिर गई. ओके, तो राजपूत स्टेट की पावर जो है वो अब गिर गई. एंड द ब्राह्मण्स हु वर एंड the Brahmins who were associated with this kingdom. So this was accompanied by marked change in the realm of culture and the religion. The coming of the Sufi. अब टर्क के साथ कौन आए थे? सूफी आए थे. Was a significant part of this development. Okay. अब लोग बात करते हैं न्यू स्टैंड इन द फैब्रिक इस्लामिक ट्रेडिशन. तो just as the region within the subcontinent were not isolated from one another. क्योंकि regions जो isolated नहीं थे तो फिर अगर रीजन आइसोलेटेड नहीं थे, अगर एक सेकेंड, सो अगर रीजन्स आइसोलेटेड नहीं थे तो फ्रॉम अनदर एज टू just as the regions within the subcontinent were not isolated from another as to so too the contact with land beyond the seas and mountains had existed for millennia. The Arab merchants, for instance, frequently poured along the western coast in the first millennium BC. कौन? अरब merchants. For instance, frequently poured along the. कहाँ पे आते थे अरब merchant? वेस्टर्न कोस्ट में. In the first millennium BC, while Central Asian people settled in the. और जो Central Asia कहाँ पे रहते थे? ये सेंट्रल एशिया वाले जो है वो नॉर्थ वेस्टर्न पार्ट में रहते थे. सब कॉन्टिनेंट ड्यूरिंग द सेम पीरियड फ्रॉम द 7th सेंचुरी विद द एडवेंट ऑफ. अब क्या हुआ? 7th सेंचुरी से आपको पता था कि कौन आने लग गए? इस्लाम आने लग गया. दिस रीजन बिकेम पार्ट ऑफ व्हाट इज ऑफन टर्म एज द इस्लामिक वर्ल्ड. On the one axis of understanding the significance of these connections that is frequently adopted is to focus on the regions of ruling elite. क्या था? रूलिंग एलाइट पे फोकस करना. 711 में एक अरब जनरल थे जिनका नाम था मोहम्मद कासिम. थी उन्होंने सिंध को कॉन्कर कर लिया था विच बिकेम पार्ट ऑफ द खलीफाज डोमेन. तो इट बिकम पार्ट ऑफ द खलीफा. कौन आए थे? मोहम्मद कासिम. कब आए थे? 1711 में. क्या कब्जा किया था? सिंध. किसकी वजह से? खलीफा डोमेन में आ गए थे. लेटर 13th सेंचुरी में टर्क और अफगान भी आ गए. ठीक है, दे एस्टैब्लिश द दिल्ली सल्तनत. So this was followed by the formation of the Sultanate of Deccan and other part of the subcontinent. Islam was finally इतना सब कुछ आ गया तो Islam was an acknowledged religion of rulers in several areas. This continued with the establishment of the Mughal Empire का 16th century में as well as in many of the regional states that emerged in the 18th century. Theoretically, Muslim rulers were to be guided by the ulama. जो मुस्लिम रूलर्स थे वो कौन गाइड करता था? उलामा. who were expected to ensure that the rule according to the Sharia. तो जो मुस्लिम रूलर थे वो को गाइड कौन करता था? उलामा. और उन किसके अकॉर्डिंग करते थे? शरिया लॉ के. तो क्लियरली द सिचुएशन वाज कॉम्प्लिकेटेड इन द सब कॉन्टिनेंट वेयर देयर बट पॉपुलेशन दैट डिड नॉट सब्सक्राइब टू इस्लाम. अब देखो, रूलर तो आपका इस्लामिक ट्रेडिशन फॉलो कर रहा था लेकिन पॉपुलेशन तो इस्लाम नहीं फॉलो करती थी. तो इट इज़ इन दिस कॉन्टेक्स्ट दैट द कैटेगरी ऑफ जिम्मी. जिम्मी क्या था? एक सेकेंड. तो कैटेगरी ऑफ जिम्मी ए मीनिंग प्रोटेक्टेड डिराइव फ्रॉम द अरेबिक वर्ड जिम्मा. Protection developed for people who followed revealed scriptures such as Jews, Christian and live under the Muslim leadership. तो कैटेगरी ऑफ जिमी दे उनको क्या करना करता? एक टैक्स पे करना पड़ता था. उस टैक्स को क्या कहते थे, वो इनको क्या पे करना करता था, एक टैक्स। इस टैक्स को कहते थे वो लोग जिजिया। एंड ग्रांट गेन द राइट टू बी प्रोटेक्टेड बाय द मुस्लिम, और ये कहते थे कि आप हमको पैसे दो, टैक्स दो, मैं आपको प्रोटेक्ट करूँगा। इन इंडिया दिस स्टेटस वॉज एक्सटेंडेड टू हिंदूज ऑल्सो। ओके, नेक्स्ट देखते हैं। You will see that the rulers of Mughal, rulers such as Mughals, they came to be regard themselves as emperor. अब मुगल वाले क्या कहते थे, मुगल वाले अपने आप को क्या कहते थे, मुगल्स अपने आप को एम्प्रर कहते थे। तो ऑफ नॉट जस्ट मुस्लिम बट ऑफ ऑल पीपल। इनफैक्ट रूलर्स ऑफन अडॉप्टेड अ फेली फ्लेक्सिबल पॉलिसी, उनकी पॉलिसी बड़ी फ्लेक्सिबल थी टुवर्ड देयर सब्जेक्ट। फॉर इंस्टेंस सेवरल रूलर्स हैव लैंड एंटोनमेंट एंड ग्रांटेड टैक्स एग्जेम्पशन। मतलब सेवरल रूलर्स जो हैं वो क्या देते थे, लैंड एंडोमेंट देते थे, ठीक है, टैक्स एग्जेम्पशन भी देते थे टू हिंदू, जैन, जोरोस्ट्रियन, क्रिश्चियन एंड ज्यूज रिलीजियस इंस्टीट्यूशन, एंड ऑल्सो एक्सप्रेस रिस्पेक्ट एंड डिवोशन, ठीक है, रिस्पेक्ट एंड devotion towards the non-Muslim religious leaders. These grants were made by several Mughals, जैसे और अकबर देते थे, औरंगजेब देते थे, ठीक है। उसके बाद फिर देयर इज एन एक्सेप्ट फ्रॉम अ फरमान इम्पीरियल ऑर्डर इशूड बाय अकबर। तो क्या किया था अकबर जी ने, एक फरमान इशू किया था कब, इन 1598, where as it reached our imminent and holy notice that the Padris, the fathers of the Holy Society of Jesus, wished to build a house of a prayer church in the city of Kambaya, that is Kambat in Gujarat. Therefore, an exalted mandate is being issued that the dignitaries of the city of Kamba yet should in no case stand in their way, but should allow them to build a church so that they may engage themselves in their own worship. It is necessary that the order of the emperor should be obeyed in every way. Okay. Now reference for जोगी है एन एक्सेप्ट फ्रॉम द लेटर रिटन बाय औरंगजेब टू अ जोगी। औरंगजेब ने एक जोगी को 1661 से लिखा था। द पोजीशन ऑफ द सब्लाइम स्टेशन शिव मूर्त गुरु आनंद नाथ जियो, मे योर रेवरेंस रिमेन इन पीस एंड हैप्पीनेस इवन अंडर द प्रोटेक्शन ऑफ श्री शिव जियो। अ पीस ऑफ क्लॉथ फॉर द cloak and a sum of 25 rupees which have been sent as an offering will reach your reverence. Your reverence may write to us whenever there is any service which can be rendered by us. So this is a Mughal painting depicting Emperor Jahangir with a jogi. Emperor Jahangir with a jogi. Okay. Now next है the popular practice of Islam. The development that followed the coming of Islam. The development that followed the coming of Islam. अब इस्लाम आया तो कुछ होगी डेवलपमेंट। दे वर नॉट कन्फाइड टू रूलिंग एलाइज, ऐसा नहीं सिर्फ रूलिंग एलाइज पे ही उसकी डेवलपमेंट का असर है। इनफैक्ट द परमिटेड फार एंड वाइड टू द सब कॉन्टिनेंट अमंग द डिफरेंट सोशल स्टेटस दैट इज प्रीजेंट आर्टिसन बारिया मर्चेंट टू नेम अ फ्यू। ऑल दोज हु अडॉप्टेड इस्लाम एक्सेप्टेड इन प्रिंसिपल द 5 pillars of the faith, that is there is one God Allah and a prophet Muhammad is his messenger, that is shahada, offering prayer 5 times a day, that is namaz, giving alms, chakat, fasting during a month of Ramjan, Saum, and performing the pilgrimage to Makkah, that is hajj. तो बेसिकली इतनी सारी चीज़ें उनको करनी पड़ती थी, ठीक है। एक आपका हो गया हज, फिर आपका हो गया रमज़ान में सौन बच रखना, 5 बार नमाज पढ़ना और ऑफरिंग पे करना, तो ये सारी चीज़ें थी। तो देयर इज़ वन गॉड, 5 पिलर्स थे इनके, ठीक है। हाउएवर द यूनिवर्सल फीचर्स वर ऑफन ओवरलेड विद डाइवर्सिटीज इन प्रैक्टिस डेराइव फ्रॉम द सेक्टेरियन एप्रिसिएशन सुन्नी एंड शिवा। ये सेक्टेरियन एप्रिसिएशन है, कुछ सुन्नी में बिलीव करते थे, कुछ शिया में, तो उनकी कुछ अलग प्रैक्टिस थी। एंड द इन्फ्लुएंस ऑफ द लोकल कस्टमरी प्रैक्टिस ऑफ कन्वर्ट्स फ्रॉम डिफरेंट सोशल मिलियो। फॉर एग्जाम्पल द खोजाज, दिस इज़ अ ब्रांच ऑफ इस्माइल, ये खोजहा, ठीक है, खोजहा ये सिया सेक्ट को फॉलो करते हैं। डेवलप न्यू मोड ऑफ कम्युनिकेशन, ठीक है, डिसमिनेटिंग आइडियाज डिराइव फ्रॉम द communication, developing ideas derived from the Quran through indigenous literary genres. These included the Ginan, derived from the Sanskrit Janan. गिनान या जनान कह सकते हो, मीनिंग नॉलेज, डिवोशनल पोएम्स इन पंजाबी, मुल्तानी, सिंधी, काची, हिंदी, गुजराती, संग इन स्पेशल रागास ड्यूरिंग द स्पेशल प्रेयर मीटिंग। एज फॉर द अरब मुस्लिम, जो अरब से जो मुस्लिम ट्रेडर्स आते थे, दे ऑल्सो सेटल अलॉन्ग द मालाबार कोस्ट, दैट इज़ इन केरला, ठीक है। अडॉप्टेड द लोकल लैंग्वेज, वो मलयालम को अडॉप्ट कर लिए थे। दे ऑल्सो अडॉप्टेड लोकल, वहाँ के लोकल कस्टम को अडॉप्ट कर लिया, जैसे मैट्रिलिनी एंड मैट्री लोकल रेसिडेंस। द कॉम्प्लेक्स ब्लेंड ऑफ अ यूनिवर्सल फेथ विद लोकल ट्रेडिशन। अब क्या था, ये ब्लेंड हो गया, उनकी कुछ फेथ थी और कुछ लोकल ट्रेडिशंस थे। इस पर द बेस्ट एग्जाम्प्लीफाइड इट इन द आर्किटेक्चर ऑफ मॉस्क, ठीक है। सम आर्किटेक्चरल फीचर्स, इतनी सारी चीज़ें समझ में आ गई। तो दिस इज़ द खोजा की मैन्यूस्क्रिप्ट, गिनान वर ट्रांसमिटेड ओरली बिफोर बीइंग रिकॉर्डेड इन द खोजा की स्क्रिप्ट। तो ये चीज़ ध्यान से देना। खोजकरी मैन्युस्क्रिप्ट है, गिनान है और खोजकी स्क्रिप्ट, ठीक है, दैट वाज डिराइव्ड फ्रॉम द लोकल लंडा द क्लिप्ड मर्सेंटाइल स्क्रिप्ट यूज बाय द लिंग्विस्टिकली डाइवर्स कम्युनिटी ऑफ खोजास इन द पंजाब। ये खोजा की बात करें कहाँ पर है, पंजाब सिंध एंड गुजरात। मैट्री लोकल रेजिडेंस की बात करी, ठीक है, इसमें क्या था, इट्स अ प्रैक्टिस वेयर वुमेन आफ्टर मैरिज रिमेन इन देयर नेटल होम विद देयर चिल्ड्रन एंड द हस्बैंड मे कम टू स्टे विद देम। ओके, बढ़िया। आई थिंक ज़्यादा आ गए हम लोग, वेट अ सेकेंड, या डन। This is a mosque in Kerala in 13th century. Note the shikhar-like roof. Now themed dynasty part of a mosque. एक second. Some architectural features. Some architectural features of the mosque are universal, such as their orientation. क्या है उनका orientation किधर है, towards the Makkah. Evident in the placement of the mihrab. Evident in the placement of मेहराब। मेहराब मतलब प्रेयर नीश, जहाँ पे प्रेयर करते हैं वो क्या होगा, ठीक है, मेहराब कैसा रखा जाएगा। मिनबार, मेहराब एंड मिनबार, तो मेहराब आपका प्रेयर नीश, मिनबार आपका पल्पिट। हाउ देयर आर सेवरल फीचर्स दैट शो वेरिएशन सच एज रूफ एंड बिल्डिंग मटेरियल, की रूफ कैसी बनती थी, उनका मटेरियल क्या यूज होता था, उस पर था। लेकिन कुछ चीज़ें से ओरिएंटेशन टुवर्ड्स द मक्का बिल्डिंग द प्लेसमेंट ऑफ द मेहराब, मेहरा एंड द मिनबार। We often take the term Hindu and the Muslims for granted as labels for religious communities, yet these terms did not gain currency for a very long time. Historians who have studied Sanskrit text inscription dating between the 8th and the 14th century point out that the term Musalman or the Muslim was virtually never used. Instead, people were occasionally identified in terms of the region from which they came. So the Turkish rulers were designated as Turuska. Turkish ruler को हम लोग क्या कहते थे, तुरुष्का, ठीक है। तजिका वर पीपल फ्रॉम तजिक, और तजिका किसे कहते थे, जो तजिकिस्तान से आते थे, ठीक है। एंड उसके बाद ही पर्शिका वर पीपल फ्रॉम पर्शिका, एंड पर्शिका वर द पीपल फ्रॉम द पर्सिया। Sometimes terms used for other peoples were applied to the new immigrant. For example, the Turks and Afghans were referred as, ये टर्क्स और अफगान को क्या कहते थे हम लोग, शाका, चैप्टर 2 and 3, and Yavanas a term used for the Greek. ओके, तो हमने तो इतना देखा था। तो जो डिफरेंट पीपल थे उनको रिलीजियस ऐसे ये नहीं कहते थे कि मुसलमान और ये नहीं। अगर टर्किश रूलर है तो उनको हमने तुरुशा, और अगर तजिकिस्तान से आया तो तजिका, पर्शिया से आया तो पर्शिका। समटाइम टर्म यूज फॉर द अदर पीपल्स फॉर अप्लाई टू द न्यू माइग्रेंट, फॉर इंस्टेंट द टर्क एंड अफगान्स, हेंस उनको क्या कहते थे, शाकास एंड यावनास, ठीक है, अ टर्म फॉर ग्रीक। अ मोर जनरल ऑफ दीज फॉर अ मोर जनरल टर्म फॉर दीज माइग्रेंट कम्युनिटीज वॉज मलिच्छा। मतलब अगर कोई भी ब्राह्मण के रिलीजन से बाहर है तो उसे मलिच्छा कहते थे। इंडिंग दे डिड नॉट ऑब्जर्व द नॉर्म्स ऑफ द कास्ट सोसाइटी, दे स्पोक लैंग्वेज, लैंग्वेज भी उनकी संस्कृत से डिराइव नहीं थी। तो सच टर्म समटाइम्स हैड अ डेरोगेटरी कनोटेशन, but they really denoted a distinct religious community of Muslims and opposition to Hindus. And as we say, the term Hindu was used in a variety of ways, not necessarily restricted to a religious connotation. Okay. Now finally the growth of Sufism के बारे में बात करते हैं हम लोग। इन द अर्ली सेंचुरीज ऑफ इस्लाम अ ग्रुप ऑफ रिलीजियस माइंडेड पीपल, ठीक है, कुछ इस्लाम को फॉलो करते थे रिलीजियस माइंड पीपल थे, ठीक है। क्या था, रिलीजियस माइंडेड पीपल, उन्हें सूफीज़ कहते थे। वो एसेटिज्म एंड मिस्टिसिज्म की तरफ चले गए थे इन प्रोटेस्ट अगेंस्ट द ग्रोइंग मटेरियलिज्म ऑफ द caliphate as a religious and the political institution. They were critical of the dogmatic definition and scholastic method, ठीक है। definition क्या थे, dogmatic definition, scholastic method of interpreting the Quran and Sunnah, tradition of prophet and adopted by the theologians. Instead, they laid emphasis on seeking salvation through intense devotion and love for God by following His command and by following the example of Prophet Muhammad, whom they regarded as a perfect human being. The Sufis thus sought an interpretation of the Quran on the basis of their personal experience. ठीक है, तो centuries in the early century of Islam, that was a group of religious minded people called Sufi. They turned to asceticism and mysticism in protest against the growing materialism of the caliphate as a religious and the political institution. They were critical of the dogmatic definition and scholastic method of interpreting Quran and Sunnah adopted by the theologians. ठीक है, they laid emphasis on seeking salvation. How? Intense devotion, love for God by following His command. फिर कनका एंड सिलसिला की बात करते हैं। By the 11th century, Sufism evolved into a well-developed movement अब धीरे धीरे सूफीज़्म क्या हो गया, एक वेल डेवलप मूवमेंट में डेवलप विद बॉडी ऑफ लिटरेचर ऑन कुरानिक स्टडीज एंड सूफी प्रैक्टिसेस. Institutionally, the Sufis began to organize communities around the hospice or kankaha, Persian, controlled by a teaching master known as Sheikh. In Arabic, Pir or Murshid in Persia, he enrolled disciples. He enrolled disciple, that is Murid, and appointed successor, that is Khalifa. He established rules for spiritual conduct and interaction between inmate as well as between layperson and the master. Sufi silsila began to crystallize in different and parts of the Islamic world around the 12th century. तो basically 12th century में ज़्यादा हो गया. The word silsila, ठीक है, literally means एक chain, significant continuous link between a master and a disciple, stretching as an unbroken spiritual genealogy to the Prophet of Muhammad. It was through this channel that the spiritual power and blessings were transmitted. ठीक है, जो भी डिवोटीज थे उनको इस पास स्पिरिचुअल पावर और ब्लेसिंग जाती थी आपके सूफी सेंट्स की. The special rituals of initiation were developed in which initiates took an oath of allegiance who wore a पांच garment shaved their hair. तो वो कि वो फॉलो करेंगे, पांच garment यूज़ करते थे and they shaved their hair. When the sheikh died, जब शेख की डेथ हो जाती थी तो हिज टॉम श्राइन, दैट इज़ दरगाह, अ पर्सन, जो अगर कोई शेख की डेथ हो गई है तो उनका जो टॉम श्राइन, दैट इज़ उनकी जो दरगाह थी, पर्शियन मीनिंग टर्म कोड, बिकेम द सेंटर ऑफ डिवोशन फॉर हिज फॉलोअर्स. दिस इनकरेज द प्रैक्टिस ऑफ पिलग्रिमेज और जियारत. ठीक है, जियारत टू हिज ग्रेव, पर्टिकुलरली ऑन हिज डेथ एनिवर्सरी. और उर उर उर्स का मेला होता है ना, डेथ एनिवर्सरी, दैट इज और मैरिज सिग्निफाइंग द यूनियन ऑफ हिज सोल विद गॉड. दिस वॉज बिकॉज पीपल बिलीव दैट इन डेथ सेंट्स वर यूनाइटेड विद, कि अगर वो मर जाते थे तो जो ये सेंट्स थे वो अपने गॉड के साथ यूनाइट हो जाते थे, तो उनको वर्शिप करते, वर दस क्लोजर टू हिम व्हेन दे देन वन लिविंग. पीपल शॉट दिस ब्लेसिंग टू अटेन मटीरियलिस्टिक, अगर कुछ मटीरियल बेनिफिट चाहिए या कुछ स्पिरिचुअल बेनिफिट चाहिए तो उनको ब्लेस करने के लिए उनकी ब्लेसिंग लेते थे. दिस इवॉल्व द कल्ट ऑफ द शेख रिवर्ड एज वली. तो ये क्या था, इसमें शेख जी को कैसे रिवर्ड करते थे, एज वली. नेक्स्ट है वली क्या है, दिस इज प्लूरल औलिया और अ फ्रेंड ऑफ गॉड. ठीक है, गॉड के फ्रेंड है, वॉज अ सूफी हु क्लेम प्रॉक्सिमिटी टू अल्लाह एक्वायरिंग हिज ग्रेस बरकत टू परफॉर्म मिरेकल्स. नेक्स्ट देखते हैं आउटसाइड द कंका. सम मिस्टिक इनिशिएटेड मूवमेंट्स बेस्ड ऑन अ radical interpretation of Sufi ideas. Many scorned the Kanka, that is, many scorned the Kanka and took to mendicancy and observed celibacy. They ignored rituals and observed extreme form of asceticism. They were known by different names, that is, Kalandhar, Madari, Malang, Haidari. Because of their deliberate defiance of the Sharia, they defied Sharia. They were often referred to as Bay Sharia, in contrast to Ba Sharia Sufis. तो Sufis were Ba Sharia, but these Kalandar, that is, ये जो जितने थे, they many scorned the Kanka and took to mendicancy and observed celibacy. ये चीज़ समझना, मैंने स्कॉन द कंका. ठीक है, फिर वो लिख के उस अगर उन्होंने गंगा को स्कॉन किया था, देन दे टुक टू मेंडिकेंसी, दे ऑब्जर्व सेलिबेसी, वो सारे रिचुअल्स को इग्नोर करने लगे. दे फॉर्म एक्सट्रीम फॉर्म ऑफ एसेसिटिज्म. दे वर नोन बाय डिफरेंट नेम, जैसे कलंदर, मदारी, मलंग, हैदारी एक्सेट्रा, जो कि वो डिफाई करते थे शरिया. दे वर कॉल्ड बे शरिया, और सूफी को कहते थे बा शरिया, हु कंपाइल विद इट. और द ग्रुप ऑफ द सूफी हु माइग्रेटेड टू इंडिया इन द लेट 12th सेंचुरी, तो जो चिश्ती था, ठीक है, चिश्ती वर द मोस्ट इन्फ्लुएंशियल. दिस वॉज बिकॉज दे अडेप्टेड सक्सेसफुली टू द लोकल इन्वायरमेंट एंड अडॉप्टेड सक्सेसफुली, he adapt कर दिए to the local environment and adopted several features of the Indian devotional tradition. Life in the Kanka Chishti Kanka. Life in the Chishti. The Kanka was the center of social life. जो कंका था, ठीक है, व्हाट इज कंका, बार बार कंका बोल रहे हैं, तो सोशल लाइफ का सेंटर था. वी नो अबाउट द शेख निजामुद्दीन hospice, that is 14th century, on the banks of river Yamuna in Gyaspur, on the outskirts of what was then the city of Delhi. It comprised several small rooms and a big hall, that is Jamaat Khana, where the inmates and the visitors lived and prayed. The inmates included family members of the Sheikh, his attendant, his disciples. So, on the outskirts of what was then the city of Delhi, it comprised several small rooms and a big hall at Jamaati Khana, where the inmates and visitors lived and prayed. The inmates included family members of the Sheikh, his attendant disciple. Sheikh lived in a small room on the roof of the hall where he met visitors in the morning and evening. At veranda surrounded the courtyard and a boundary which ran around the complex. On one occasion, fearing a Mongol invasion, people from the neighboring area they flocked into the Kanka to seek refuge. जब मंगोल इन्वेजन होने वाला था तो लोग अगल बगल से यहाँ पे रिफ्यूज लेने के लिए चले आए थे. उसके बाद हाँ वली और दैट इज प्लूरल औलिया और अ फ्रेंड ऑफ गॉड। उसके बाद मोर टीचर्स ऑफ द चिश्ती सिलसिला, एक बार देख लो इनको। तो एक है शेख म्यूनुद्दीन सिद्दी 1235 अजमेर राजस्थान, ख्वाजा कुतुबुद्दीन बख्तियार काकी 1235 दिल्ली, शेख फरीदुद्दीन गांजे शिखर 1265 अजोधान दैट इज पाकिस्तान, शेख निजामुद्दीन औलिया 1325 इन दिल्ली, शेख नसीरुद्दीन चिराग दिल्ली 1356 इन दिल्ली। तो 13 में दो, एक 1325 एक 1356, 25 वाला था औलिया, 35 वाले थे औलिया और 56 वाले थे चिराग दिल्ली। 1265 में गाजा शक्कर जो कि अजोधान पाकिस्तान से थे। तो देयर वाज एन ओपन किचन लंगर रन ऑन अ, एक ओपन किचन था जैसे लंगर कहते हैं, रन ऑन फुतू अनमार्क्स फॉर चैरिटी फ्रॉम मॉर्निंग टिल लेट नाइट, पीपल फ्रॉम ऑल वेक ऑफ लाइफ, सोल्जर्स, स्लेव्स, सिंगर, मर्चेंट, पोर्ट, ट्रैवलर, रिच, पुअर, हिंदू जोगीज, कलंदर्स केम सीकिंग discipleship, amulets for healing, and the intercession of the Sheikh in various matters. Other visitors included poets such as Amir Hassan Siji, Amir Khosraw Dev, and the court historian Ziauddin Barani, all of whom wrote about the Sheikh. So सबने लिखा है, आमिर हसन सिज्जी ने भी लिखा है, ठीक है, आमिर खुसराव ने लिखा है, जियाउद्दीन बरौनी ने लिखा है, और फ्रॉम देम रोट अबाउट द शेख, they all wrote about the Sheikh. Practice that were adopted including bowing before the Sheikh, offering water to visitors, shaving the head of the initiate, yogic exercise represented attempt to assimilate local tradition. So Sheikh Nizamuddin appointed several spiritual successors and deputed them to set up hospices in various parts of the subcontinent. As a result, the teaching, practice and organization of the Chishti as well as the fame of the Sheikh spread rapidly. तो निजामुद्दीन औलिया ने बहुत सारे स्पिरिचुअल सक्सेसर को चुना था, उनको डेप्यूट किया था कि भाई जाइए आप हॉस्पिटल सेटअप करिए इन वेरियस पार्ट ऑफ द सबकॉन्टिनेंट, जिसकी वजह से बहुत ज़्यादा फैल गया था. This in turn drew pilgrims to the shrine and also the shrine of its spiritual ancestors. Chishti divorced religion, that is Ziyarat and Qawwali. Pilgrimage called Ziyarat to tombs of Sufi saint, that is Ziyarat. Ziyarat मतलब क्या था? Pilgrimage called Ziyarat, that is where tomb of Sufi saint is prevalent all over the Muslim world. The practice is an occasion for seeking the Sufis' spiritual gaze, that is Barakat. For more than 7 centuries, people of various creed, classes and social backgrounds have expressed their devotion at the Dargah of the five-great Chishti saint. Among these, the most revered shrine is that of Khwaja Muinuddin Chishti, popularly known as Garib Nawaz. The early textual references to Khwaja Muinuddin Dargah date to the 14th century. He was evidently popular because of the austerity and the piety of the Sheikh, the greatness of his spiritual successor and the patronage of royal visitor मोहम्मद बिन तुगलक आए थे इनको विजिट करने 324 से 51 तक. तो एक बार फिर से एक बार देख लेना. चिश्ती एंड डिवोशनल जियारत एंड कवाली. तो पिलग्रिमेज जो कहते हैं इज जियारत to tomb of Sufi saint is prevalent all over the Muslim world. This practice is an occasion for seeking the Sufis' spiritual grace, that is barakat. For more than 7 centuries, people of various creed, class and social backgrounds have expressed their devotions at the dargahs of the five great Chishti saints. And among these, the most revered shrine is that of Khwaja Muinuddin Chishti, popularly known as Garib Nawaz. The earliest actual reference to Khwaja Muinuddin Dargah due to date to the 14th century. It was evidently popular because of the austerity and the piety of the Sikh. ठीक है, उनका दरगाह ख्वाजा मोइनुद्दीन दरगाह, इट वॉज बेसिकली ख्वाजा मोइनुद्दीन दरगाह, उनकी पीटी एंड द ऑस्टेरिटी, द ग्रेटनेस ऑफ स्पेशल एंड द इनको पैट्रोनेज भी मिला था रॉयल विजिटर्स के, दैट मोहम्मद बिन तुगलक इनको विजिट करने आए थे. ठीक है, he was the first sultan to visit the shrine, but the earliest construction to the house the tomb was found in the late 15th century. But the earliest construction to house the tomb was funded by the late 15th century by Sultan Ghiyasuddin Khalji. Sultan Ghiyasuddin Khalji of Malwa. Since the shrine was located on the trade route linking Delhi and Gujarat, it attracted a lot of travelers. By the 16th century, the shrine had become very popular. In fact, it was spirited singing of pilgrims bound for Ajmer that inspired Akbar to visit the tomb. He went there 14 times. कितनी बार गए थे? 14 बार गए थे. Sometimes 2 to 3 times a year to seek the blessing for new conquest, fulfillment of vows, and the birth of a son. He maintained this tradition until 1580. Each of these visits were celebrated by generous gifts, which were recorded in imperial documents. For example, in 1568, he offered a huge cauldron, that is teak, to facilitate cooking for pilgrims. He also had a mosque constructed within the compound of दरगाह के अंदर एक मॉस्क भी उन्होंने कन्स्ट्रक्ट किया. सो दिस वॉज द शेख ग्रीटिंग द मुगल एम्पर जहांगीर ऑन हिज पिलग्रिमेज. शेख ग्रीटिंग मुगल एम्पर जहांगीर ऑन हिज पिलग्रिमेज टू अजमेर, पेंटिंग बाय एन आर्टिस्ट नेम्ड मनोहर. तो मनोहर किसके टाइम के आर्टिस्ट थे, ज़रा मुझे यही बता दो. सो जो ये चीज़ देखो बहुत छोटी सी लिखी है, मनोहर. उन्होंने ये जहांगीर के टाइम के पेंटर थे. ठीक है. नेक्स्ट देखो, द पिलग्रिमेज. द फॉलोइंग इज एन एक्सेप्ट फ्रॉम जहानारा's बायोग्राफी ऑफ शेख मुनुद्दीन चिश्ती. तो किसने लिखा था? शेख मुनुद्दीन के चिश्ती के बारे में जहानारा ने लिखा था. टाइटल मुन्नी अल-अरवा. आफ्टर प्रेजिंग द गॉड the lowly fakira humble sword Jahanara went from the capital Agra in the company of my great father Emperor Shah Jahan towards the pure religion of incomparable Ajmer. I was committed to hit this idea that every day in every situation I would perform 2 cycles of optional prayer. For several days I did not sleep on a leopard skin at night. I did not extend my feet in the direction of the black sanctuary of the river saving master, and I did not turn my back towards him. I passed the days beneath the trees. On Thursday, the 4th of the blessed month of the Ramzan, I attained the happiness of pilgrimage to the illuminated and above perfumed tomb. Within an hour of daylight remaining, I went to the holy sanctuary and rubbed my pale face with the dust of that threshold. From the doorway to the blessed tomb, I went barefoot, kissing the ground. Having entered the room, I went around the light-filled tomb of my master 7 times. Finally, with my own hand, I put the finest quality of attar on the perfumed tomb of the revered one, and having taken off the rose scarf that I had on my head, I placed it on the top of a blessed tomb. So also a part of GRS is the use of music and dance, including the mystical chant performed by specially trained musician और कव्वाल्स to evoke divine ecstasy. इनका काम क्या होता है? तो evoke divine ecstasy. ठीक है. The Sufis remember God either by reciting Jikr, the divine name, him, or evoking his presence through Sama. Jikr, उनका नाम लेके और audition or performance of the mystical music. Sama was an integral to the Chishtis. Sama was integral to Chishtis and implies interaction with the indigenous devotional tradition. इसके बाद था द लैम्प ऑफ द एंटायर लैंड. तो ईस्ट सूफी Each shrine was associated with distinctive feature. This is what an 18th century visitor from the Deccan, Dargah Kuli Khan, he wrote about the shrine of Nasiruddin Chirag Delhi in his Murakka-e-Delhi album of Delhi. The stake in the grave is not the lamp of Delhi but of the entire country. People turn up there in the crowd, particularly on Sunday. In the month of Diwali, the entire population of Delhi visits it and stay in tents around the spring track for days. They take bath to obtain the cures from chronic diseases. Muslim and Hindu pay visit in the same spirit. From morning till evening, people came and also make themselves busy in the merrymaking in the shade of the trees. Okay. Next is the language and communication. It was not just in Sama that the Chistis adopted the local language. In Delhi, those associated with the Chisti Silsila converse in Hindavi, the language of the people. Other Sufis such as Baba Farid composed verses in the local language which were incorporated in Guru Granth Sahib. बहुत ज़्यादा इंपॉर्टेंट है ये चीज़. बाबा फरीद जो थे उनकी जो वर्सेस थे उसमें लोकल लैंग्वेज में थे और उनके कुछ गुरु ग्रंथ साहिब में रखे गए. येट अदर्स कंपोज लॉन्ग पोएम. जो लॉन्ग पोएम थी उन्हें क्या कहते थे? मसनावी. लॉन्ग पोएम को क्या कहते थे? मसनावी. टू एक्सप्रेस आइडियाज ऑफ डिवाइन लव यूजिंग human love as an allegory. For example, the Prem Akhian love story Padmavat composed by Prem Akhian. It was a love story that is of Padmavat. किसने लिखी थी? मलिक मोहम्मद जैसी. Revolved around the romance of Padmini and Ratan Sen in The King of Chittor. Their trials were symbolic of the soul's journey to the divine. Such poetic compositions were often recited in hospices, usually during the Sama. A different genre of Sufi poetry was composed in around the town of Bijapur, Karnataka. These were a short poem. तो जो लॉन्ग पोएम थे उनको नाम था क्या कहते थे? मसनावी. लॉन्ग पोएम को कहते थे मसनावी. और जो शॉर्ट पोएम थी, ठीक है, इन दखनी, that is a variant of Urdu attributed to Chishti Sufis who lived in this region during the 17th and 18th century. These poems were probably sung by women and while performing household chores like grinding grains and spinning. तो ये दखनी थी, वो लोग लिखते थे. अदर कंपोजिशंस फॉर इन द फॉर्म ऑफ लूरीनामा और ललाबाइज. ठीक है, ललाबाइज एंड शादीनामा और वेडिंग सॉन्ग्स. इट इज़ लाइक द सूफीज ऑफ दिस रीजन वर इंस्पायर्ड बाय द प्री एग्जिस्टिंग भक्ति ट्रेडिशन ऑफ द कन्नड़ वचन्स ऑफ द लिंगायत एंड द मराठी अभंग्स ऑफ द संत ऑफ पंढारपुर. It is through this medium that Islam gradually gained a place in the village of the Deccan. Okay, now next. Amir Khusro and the Call. आमिर खुसरो 1253 to 1325 द ग्रेट पोइट, ठीक है, म्यूजिशियन एंड डिसिपल ऑफ शेख निजामुद्दीन औलिया। ये चीज़ ध्यान रखना कि आमिर खुसरो किसके डिसिपल थे? शेख निजामुद्दीन औलिया के। गिव अ यूनिक फॉर्म टू द चिश्ती समा, ठीक है, बाय इंट्रोड्यूसिंग कॉल, अरेबिक वर्ड मीन सेइंग, अ हिम संग एट द ओपनिंग और क्लोजिंग ऑफ कव्वाली। दिस was followed by Sufi poetry in Persian, Hindavi or Urdu, and sometimes using words from all of these languages. Qawwal, those who sing these songs at the shrine of Sheikh Nizamuddin Aulia, always start their recital with the qawwal. ठीक है, call. Today Qawwali is performed in shrines all over the subcontinent. So a song set to the rhythm of the spinning wheel. As you take the cotton, you do जिक्र जाली. As you separate the cotton, you do जिक्र कल्पी. ठीक है, जब कॉटन को लेते हो तो आप जिक्र जाली करते हो, जब आप कॉटन को सेपरेट करते हो जिक्र कलवी. एंड एज यू स्पूल द थ्रेड यू शुड डू जिक्र हैंड. जिक्र should be uttered from the stomach through the chest and threaded through the throat, and the threads of the bread should be counted one by one, O sister, up to 24,000 to this day. And I offer this to your peer as a gift. ये है कव्वाली दरगाह ऑफ नवाजुद्दीन औलिया. कॉल किसने रखा था? आमिर खुसरो. ठीक है, इसके बाद फिर नेक्स्ट है the Sufis and the state. A major feature of the Chishti tradition was austerity, including maintaining a distance from worldly power. However, this was by no means a situation of absolute isolation from political power. The Sufis accepted unsolicited grant donation from the political elite. The Sultan in turn set up charitable trust, that is, Awqaf as endowment for hospices and granted tax-free land. इनाम देते थे. तो चैरिटेबल ट्रस्ट जिसको नाम बोलते थे ऑकफ. व्हाट इज चैरिटेबल ट्रस्ट वाज कॉल्ड ऑकफ. चैरिटेबल ट्रस्ट वाज कॉल्ड austerity, that is maintaining a tradition of maintaining a distance from worldly power. However, this was by no means a situation of absolute isolation from political power. सूफी जो है वो गिफ्ट और ग्रांट डोनेशन सब लेते थे पॉलिटिकल लाइट से, और सुल्तान जो है उनके लिए चैरिटेबल ट्रस्ट ऑकफ एज एंडोमेंट फॉर हॉस्पाइसेस एंड ग्रांटेड टैक्स फ्री लैंड, that is इनाम. The churches accepted donation in cash as well as kind. Rather than accumulate donation, they prefer to use these fully on immediate requirements such as food, clothes, living quarters, and ritual necessities such as some. All this enhanced the moral authority of the sheikh, which in turn attracted people from all walks of life. Further, their piety and scholarship and people's belief in their miraculous power made Sufis popular among the masses whose support king wished to secure. So, king did not simply need to demonstrate their association with Sufi; they also required the legitimization from them. When the Turks set up the Delhi Sultanate, resisted the insistence of the ulama on imposing Sharia as a state law because they anticipated opposition from their subjects, the majority of whom were non-Muslim. The Sultan then sought out the Sufis who derived their authority directly from God and did not depend on jurists to interpret the Sharia. Besides, it was believed that Aulia could intercede with God in order to improve the material and spiritual condition of the ordinary human being. This explains why king often wanted their tombs to be in the vicinity of Sufi shrine and hospices. However, there were instances of conflict between the Sultan and Sufi. To assert their authority, both expected that certain rituals be performed, such as prostration and kissing of the feet. Occasionally, the Sufi Sheikh was addressed with high-sounding title. For example, the disciples of Nizamuddin Aulia addressed him as Sultan ul Masaik, literally Sultan amongst the Sheikh. ठीक है, निजामुद्दीन औलिया. फिर इसके बाद ये देखते हैं, that is declining. This is an excerpt from the okay. This excerpt from a Sufi text describes the proceedings at the Sheikh Nizamuddin hospice in 1313. I, the author Amir Hassan Siji, had the good fortune of kissing his Nizamuddin Aulia's feet. At this time, a local ruler had sent him the deed of ownership to 2 gardens and much land, along with the provision and tools for their maintenance. The ruler had also made it clear that he was relinquishing all his right to both the garden and the land. The master had not accepted that gift. Instead, he had lamented, "What have I do with the gardens and fields and the land? None of our spiritual masters had engaged in such activity." Then he told an appropriate story. Sultan Ghiyasuddin, who at that time was still known as Ulugh Khan, सुल्तान गियासुद्दीन को क्या कहते थे? उलुग खान, who at that time was still known as Ulugh Khan, came to visit Sheikh Fariduddin and offered some money and ownership deed for 4 villages of the Sheikh, and money being inked for the benefit of the derivates, that is Sufi, and the land for his use. Smiling Sheikh al-Islam Fariduddin said, "Give me the money, I will dispense it to the dervishes. But as for those land deeds, keep them. There are many who long for them. Give them away to such persons." So this is the Dargah of the Sheikh Salim Chishti. He was a direct descendant of Baba Farid, constructed in Fatehpur Sikri, that is in Akbar's capital, symbolized the bond between the Christies and the Mughal state. Now, non-devotional path, dialogue and dissent in northern India. Many poets here engage in explicit and implicit dialogue with the each new social situation, ideas and institution. Let us see how the dialogue found expressions. We focus here on three of the most influential figures of the time. Weaving a divine fabric, Kabir. Kabir, he was a 14th-15th century. He is perhaps one of the most outstanding example of a poet saint who emerged within this context. 1415, Kabir 1415. And historians have painstakingly tried to reconstruct his life and times through a study of composition attributed to him as well as the later hagiographies. Such exercises have proved to be challenging to a number of count. Verses ascribed to Kabir have been compiled in three distinct but overlapping traditions. The Kabir Bijak is preserved by the Kabir Panth, the path or the sect of Kabir in Varanasi and elsewhere in Uttar Pradesh. And the Kabir Ganthavali is associated with the दादू पंथ इन राजस्थान. तो एक हो गया कबीर पंथ. द कबीर बीजक इज प्रिजर्व बाय द कबीर पंथ. कहाँ पर? वाराणसी, उत्तर प्रदेश में. कबीर ग्रंथावली दादू पंथ इन राजस्थान. ठीक है. And many of his compositions are found in Adi Granth Sahib. All these manuscripts and compilations were made along after death of the Kabir. By the 19th century, anthologies of verses attributed to him circulated in print in regions as far apart as Bengal, Gujarat, and Maharashtra. Kabir's poems have survived in several languages and dialects, and some are composed in the special language of Nirgun poet, the Sant Bhasa. कौन सी? The Sant Bhasa. Others known as Ulat Bansi, upside down sayings, are written in a form in which everybody meaning are inverted. These hint at the difficulties of capturing the nature of the ultimate reality in word. Expressions such as lotus which blooms without flower and the fire raging in the ocean convey a sense of Kabir's mystical experiences. Also striking in the range of tradition Kabir drew on to describe the ultimate reality. These include Islam. He described the ultimate reality as Allah, Khuda, Hazrat, and Peer. He also used a term drawn from Vedanta tradition, Alak, the unseen, Nirakar, the formless, Brahman, Atman. Other terms with mystical qualities such as Shabda, sound, or Shunya, emptiness, were drawn from yogic traditions. इतनी चीज़ समझ में आ गई. लैंग्वेज ऑफ निर्गुणपुट, संतवासा, उल्तबंसी. ठीक है. और उसके बाद फिर था composition attributed to Kapoor. Tell me, brother, how can there be no one law out of the word but two? Who led you so astray? God is called by many names. Names like Allah, Ram, Rahim, Keshav, Hari, Hazrat. Gold may be shaped into rings and bangles. Isn't it gold all the same? Distinctions are only words we invent. Kabir says that they are both mistaken. Neither can find the only Ram. One kills the goat, the other cause. They waste their lives in disputation. This is the roadside musician, 17th century Mughal painting. Likely that the composition of songs were sung by the such musician. Diverse and sometimes conflicting ideas are expressed in this poem. तो कैसे ideas थे? Diverse and conflicting ideas. Some poems draw an Islamic ideas. कुछ poem में Islamic ideas थे, and they use monotheism and iconoclasm to attack Hindu polytheism and idol worship. Others use the Sufi concept of Jikr and Ishq, love to express the Hindu practice of Nam Naam Simran. ठीक है? That is remembrance of the God name, Jikr and Ishq. Were all these composed by Kabir? We may never be able to tell with certainty. Although scholars have tried to analyze the language, style, and content to re-establish the verses could be Kabir's. What this rich corpus of verses also recognize is that Kabir was and is to be the present the source of inspiration for those who question entrenched religious and social institution, ideas and practice in their search for divine. Just as Kabir's ideas probably crystallized through dialogue and debate. अब कबीर अपने आइडिया को फॉर्म कैसे करें? बहुत सारे डायलॉग और डिबेट होता था, एक्सप्रेशन और इम्प्रेशन, द ट्रेडिशंस ऑफ सूफीज एंड योगीज इन द रीजन्स ऑफ द अवध. that is in Uttar Pradesh. His legacy was claimed by several groups who remembered him and continued to do so. This is most evident in later debates about whether he was a Hindu or a Muslim by birth, debates that are reflected in hagiographies. Many of these were composed from the 17th century onward, about 200 years after Kabir's lifetime. Hagiographies within the Vaishnava tradition attempt to suggest that he was born a Hindu, that is Kabir Das. Kabir itself is an Arabic word meaning great, but was raised by a poor Muslim family belonging to the community of weavers or Julahas, who were relatively recent converts to Islam. So they also said that he was initiated into bhakti by a guru. इनके गुरु का नाम क्या था? रामानंद. गुरु का नाम क्या था? रामानंद. Guru Ramanand. However, the verses attributed to Kabir use the word Guru and Satguru, but do not mention the name of any specific preceptor. Our historians have pointed out that it is very difficult to establish that Ramanand and Kabir were contemporaries without assigning important, improbably long lives to either or both. Without assigning improbable long lives were contemporaries. कि ये दोनों कंटेम्प्रेरी थे. So while traditions linking the two cannot be accepted at face value, they show how important the legacy of Kabir was for later generation. उसके बाद बाबा गुरु नानक है द सेक्रेड फोर्ट. बाबा गुरु नानक was born in a Hindu merchant family in a village called ननकाना साहिब. कब इनका जन्म हुआ था? 1469 से 1539. 1469 1539 1469 1539 और 14-15 सेंचुरी में आपके वो भी थे दैट क्या नाम है? कबीरदास जी. ठीक है. Nankana Sahib near the river Ravi in the predominantly Muslim Punjab. He trained to be an accountant and studied Persian. He was married at a young age, but he spent most of his time among the Sufi and the Bhaktas. He also traveled widely. The message of Baba Guru Nanak is spelled out in hymns and teaching. These suggest that he advocated a form of Nirgun Bhakti. He firmly repudiated the external in the form of hymns and teaching. So Nirgun Bhakti. He firmly repudiated the external practice of the religion he saw around him. He rejected sacrifices, ritual path, image worship, austerity, scriptures, and the scriptures of both Hindus and Muslims. For Baba Guru Nanak, the absolute or the Rab had no gender or form. कोई भी जेंडर नहीं, कोई भी फॉर्म नहीं. He proposed a simple way to connect to the divine by remembering and repeating the divine name, expressing it ideas through hymns called Shabd. Through Shabd in Punjabi, the language of the region, Baba Guru Nanak would sing these compositions in various ragas. Various attendants मर्दाना played the जो इनके अटेंडेंट थे जिनको मर्दाना बोलते थे वो रबाब को प्ले करते थे. बाबा गुरु नानक ऑर्गेनाइज हिज फॉलोवर्स इनटू कम्युनिटी. पहले फॉलोवर्स थे, फॉलोवर्स बन के कम्युनिटी. ही सेट अप रूल्स फॉर कांग्रेगेशनल वर्शिप दैट इज संगत इन्वॉल्विंग कलेक्टिव रेसिटेशन. He appointed one of his disciples, Angad, to succeed him as the preceptor guru, and this practice followed for nearly 200 years. It appears that Baba Guru Nanak did not wish to establish a new religion, but after his death, his followers consolidated. तो उन्होंने अपनी सारी प्रैक्टिस को कंसोलिडेट किया, उसको दूसरों से हिंदू मुस्लिम से डिस्टिंग्विश किया. द फिफ्थ प्रेसेप्टर गुरु अर्जन जो 5वें नंबर के थे, गुरु अर्जन कंपाइल बाबा गुरु नानक के जितने भी हिम्स थे वो कंपाइल किया अलॉन्ग विद दोज ऑफ द हिज फोर्सेस एंड अदर रिलीजियस पोएट्स लाइक बाबा फरीद, रविदास के पीछे ऑल्सो नोन एज रायदास, कबीर इन द आदि ग्रंथ. ठीक है. These hymns are called Gurbani, are composed in various language. Gurbani. In the late 17th century, the 10th preceptor that is Guru 17th century में जो 10th गुरु थे that is Guru Gobind Singh included the composition of the 9 गुरु थे. एक बहादुर सिख and the scripture is known as Guru Granth Sahib. गुरुबानी कहते थे Guru Granth Sahib. Guru Gobind Singh was the foundation of a Khalsa Panth, an army of the pure defined its 5 symbol. बाल नहीं काटने, dagger रखना है, pair of swords, a comb and a steel bangle. Under him the community got consolidated as a social, religious and military force. मीरा बाई वो भी 15th से 16th सेंचुरी में ही थी. इस perhaps the best known woman poet. It within the Bhakti tradition, biographies have been reconstructed. It primarily from the bhajans attributed to her, which were transmitted orally for centuries. According to these, she was a Rajput princess. Rajput princess कहाँ थी? मेटा in Marwar. Who was married against ये मटा कहाँ पे? मारवाड़ में. Who was married against her wishes to a prince of Sisodia clan of मेवाड़. मारवाड़ की थी, इनकी शादी हो गई मेवाड़ में सिसोदिया क्लैन पे राजस्थान में. She defied her husband and did not submit to the traditional role of wife and mother. Instead recognized Krishna, the avatar of Vishnu, as a lover. Her in-laws tried to poison her, but she escaped from the palace to live as a wandering saint, composing songs that are characterized by intense expression of emotions. This is a part attributed to Mirabai. I will build a funeral pyre of sandalwood and aloe, lighted by your hand. When I am burned away to cinders, smear his ash upon your limb. Let flame be lost in flame. In another verse, he sings, "What can be Miva's ruler do to me? If God is angry, all is lost. But what can the Rana do?" According to some tradition, her preceptor was Raidas. उनका कौन preceptor कौन थे? बहुत इंपॉर्टेंट है रायदास है ही वॉज अ लेदर वर्कर दिस कुड इंडिकेट हर डिफाइंस ऑफ द नॉर्म्स ऑफ कास्ट सोसाइटी आफ्टर रिजेक्टिंग द comfort of her husband palace he is supposed to have donned the white robe of a widow or the saffron robe of a renunciate. Although Mirabai did not attract a sect or group of followers, he has been recognized as a source of inspiration for centuries. Her songs continue to be sung by women and one especially those who are poor and considered low caste in Gujarat as well as Rajasthan. Now Shankardev in the late 15th century, 15th century के एकदम आखिरी में थे 14 के थे शंकरदेव emerged as one of the leading proponent of Vaishnavism. लेकिन कहाँ पर असम में his teaching also known as भगवती धर्म because they were based on Bhagavad Gita and Bhagavad Puran is focused on absolute surrender to the supreme deity. In his case उन्होंने विष्णु को surrender किया था. He emphasized the need for नाम कीर्तन recitation of the name of the Lord in satsang or congregation of pious devotees. He also encouraged the establishment of satra or monasteries for the transmission of spiritual knowledge and namghar or prayer hall. Many of these institutions and practice continue to flourish in the region. His major contribution includes Kirtan Ghosh. इनका क्या था? Kirtan Ghosh. We have seen that historians draw on a variety of on a variety of sources to reconstruct histories of religion tradition. These include जैसे sculpture हो गया, architecture, stories about religious preceptor, composition attributed to women and men engaged in the quest of understanding the nature of divine. As we have seen in chapter 1 and 4, the sculptures and architecture, ठीक है, there were many sculptures and architecture can only be understood if we have a grasp of the context. That is, what are the ideas behind it? What are the beliefs of the people and the practice of those who produce and use these images and building? What about the textual traditions regarding the religious belief? If you return to the sources in this chapter, you will notice that they include a wide variety written in several different languages and style. They range from apparently simple direct language of the Vachanas of Basavanna or the ornate Persian of the Farman of Mughal Emperor. Understanding each type of text requires different skill. Apart from a familiarity with several languages, the historians have to be aware of the subtle variation in style that characterize each genre. तो ये हमने किसके बारे में इतना पढ़ा था? शंकर देव के बारे में. असम ने वैष्णविज्म, भगवत धर्म दैट इज भगवत गीता, भगवत पुराण, विष्णु, नाम कीर्तन, सत्संग और कांग्रेशन जहाँ पे कीर्तन घोष होता था. ठीक है, ओके. Now varieties of sources used to reconstruct his history, the history of Sufi tradition. A wide range of texts were produced in and around Sufi khanqahs, treatises और manuals dealing with the Sufis thought and practice. देखो treatise जो होते जो उनके treatises and manuals होते थे वो उनके सूफी जो थे उनके thoughts और उनकी practices पे बेस्ड थे. इसमें एक है कश्फ उल महजूब ऑफ अली बिन उस्मान हुजवीरी. ठीक है, is an example of this genre. It enables historians to see how traditions outside the subcontinent influence the Sufi thought in India. Then we learn about Malfuzat, literally uttered conversation of Sufi chain. An early text on Malfuzat is the Fawad al-Fawd, a collection of conversation of Sheikh Nizamuddin Aulia compiled by Amir Hassan Siji Dehelvi, a noted Persian poet. किसने लिखा है? आमिर हसन सीजी दहलवी. Source 9 contains an excerpt from this text. Malfuzat were compiled by different Sufi silsilas and the permission of the Sikhs. These had obvious didactic purpose. Several examples have been found from the different parts of the subcontinent, including the Deccan. They were compiled about several centuries. Now, then is Maktubat, literally written collection of letters written by Sufi masters, which tell us about the Sikhs' experiences of religious truth that we wanted to share with others. They also reflect the life condition of the recipient and our responses to their aspiration and difficulties, both spiritual and mundane. The letters known as Maktubat-e-Imam Rabbani of the noted 17th century Naqshbandi Sheikh Ahmad Sarhindi, whose ideology is often contrasted with a liberal and non-sectarian view of Akbar, are among those most frequently discussed by scholars. Maktubat, तो treatise और manual जैसे कश्फ उफ महफूज of Ali bin Usman Huzfiri, Malfuzat of Fawad al-Fawd, Sheikh Nizamuddin Aulia, composition by Amar Hassan Siji Dehelvi. ठीक है, नेक्स्ट है मकतूबत ए इमाम रब्बानी, नक्शबंदी शेख अहमद सरहिंदी की. नाउ तज़किरात Tazkiras literally to mention and memorize biographies or account of saint, biographical account of saint. The 14th century Siyar ul Aulia of Mir Khward Kermani was the first Sufi तस्कीरा रिटन इन इंडिया। ठीक है, 14th century में सियार उल औलिया मीर कुवात किरमनी। ठीक है, द मोस्ट फेमस तस्कीरा इज़ द अकबर उल अकयार ऑफ अब्दुल हजाक मोहम्मद दहलवी। ठीक है, Delhi. The authors of the Tazkiras often sought to establish the precedence of their own orders and glorify their special genealogies. Many details are often implausible, full of elements of fantastic. Still, they are of great value for historians and help them to understand more fully the nature of the tradition. Remember that each of the traditions we have been considering in this chapter generated a wide range of textual and oral mode of communication, some of which have been preserved, many which have been modified in the process of transmission, and others are probably lost forever. Okay, now this is a virtually all these religious tradition continue to flourish till date. This continuity has certain advantage for historians as it allows them to compare the contemporary practice with those described in textual tradition as shown in old paintings and to trace changes. At the same time, because these traditions are part of people's lived belief and practice, there is often a lack of acceptance and the possibility that these may have changed over time. The challenges for historians is to understand such investigation with sensitivity, while at the same time recognize that religious traditions, like other religious traditions, are dynamic and change over time. 500 से अपार संबंधार संदर मूर्ति in Tamil Nadu, in Nammalvar, Manikavachakar, Andal, Tondadipodi in Tamil Nadu, Al Huzuri, Datgang Paksh in the Punjab, Ramanujacharya in Tamil Nadu, Ramanujacharya, Al Huzuri, दातागंज पक्ष इन पंजाब। ठीक है, उसके बाद फिर 1100 से 1200 बसवाना इन कर्नाटका, 1200 से जनान देव मुक्ताबाई इन महाराष्ट्र। ये जनान देव और मुक्ताबाई 1200-1300 में थे और ये महाराष्ट्र में थे। जनान देव मुक्ताबाई। ख्वाजा मोइनुद्दीन चिश्ती राजस्थान में, बाहुद्दीन जकारिया एंड फरीदुद्दीन गंज शकर इन पंजाब, जकारिया और फरीदुद्दीन गंज शकार। फिर कुतुबुद्दीन बख्तियार काकी इन दिल्ली। उसके बाद फिर लाल देद इन कश्मीर 1300 से 1400 से, लाल देद इन कश्मीर, लाल शहबाज कलंदर इन सिंध, कलंदर। ठीक है, इन सिंध। निजामुद्दीन औलिया इन दिल्ली। तो दिल्ली में भी हमने दिल्ली में हमने एक पढ़ी कुतुबुद्दीन बख्तियार काकी और एक है निजामुद्दीन औलिया, उनके बाद में आए थे। बख्तियार काकी के बाद निजामुद्दीन औलिया में आए थे। फिर रामानंद उत्तर प्रदेश में थे और चौका मिला महाराष्ट्र में। महाराष्ट्र में मैंने अभी कई नाम पढ़े। देखो, लाल देद कहाँ पे थे? कश्मीर में। जनान देव मुक्ताबाई और इनके जस्ट कंट्रीब्यूटिंग सेंचुरी में आए थे कौन सा चुक्का मेला इन महाराष्ट्र। फिर आते हैं शराफुद्दीन या मनेरी इन बिहार, शराफुद्दीन इन बिहार। फिर आते हैं कबीर रायदास सूरदास इन उत्तर प्रदेश, बाबा गुरु नानक इन पंजाब, वल्लभ आचार्य इन गुजरात, अब्दुल्ला सत्तारी इन ग्वालियर, मोहम्मद शाह आलम इन गुजरात, मीर सैयद मोहम्मद गेसु दराज इन गुलबर्ग, शंकरा देव इन असम। ठीक है, एंड टूकाराम इन महाराष्ट्र। तो कबीर रविदास सूरदास सब उत्तर प्रदेश में, गुरु नानक जी पंजाब में, वल्लभ आचार्य गुजरात में, अब्दुल्ला सत्तारी ग्वालियर में, मोहम्मद शाह आलम गुजरात में। तो वल्लभ आचार्य और शाह आलम इन गुजरात। उसके बाद 1500 से 1600 से सेंचुरी की बात करते हैं तो श्री चैतन्य जो है वो बंगाल में, मीराबाई राजस्थान में, शेख अब्दुल कुद्दूस गंगोही, मलिक मोहम्मद जायसी, तुलसीदास इन उत्तर प्रदेश। तो शेख अब्दुल कुद्दूस गंगोही, मलिक मोहम्मद जायसी, तुलसीदास जी उत्तर प्रदेश में 1500 से 1600 में। 1600 से शेख अहमद सरहिंदी इन हरियाणा, सरहिंदी, अमिया मीर इन पंजाब। ओके, थैंक यू सो मच।